Welcome to another episode of Full Build Friday, where I try to build a character from a comic, game, or similar source using the baseline rules of Pathfinder Second Edition and the Path Builder app. I am admittedly feeling a little bit under the weather this week as I returned from my vacation, but I did want to make sure I had a build out for you guys. So this week I am unstuck from the Hot W builds and exploring what I thought to be an interesting concept as I try to build Smite's Hell, the goddess of the Underworld.
We rule over life, growth, and flourishing,
as well as the death, decay, and decomposition.
I'm not sure when Smite 2 is coming out or how many changes are going to happen to this character, but I have had some ideas cooking for them for a while, ever since I read the player core actually. However, before we start talking about all of that, we need to look at some build goals. Hel is a Norse deity of the Underworld, the daughter of Loki who, like her siblings, was prophesied to bring ruin during Ragnarok. On top of that, she was born with half her body in shadow and the other half in light, marking her as both living and dead. Despite all this, Odin gave her charge of the Underworld, where she showed kindness to the young, weak, and infirm that didn't make it to Valhalla, while the cruel were cast deeper down. As for her more mechanical matters, she is a ranged mage, reliant on her abilities to deal burst damage while lacking in durability. She is a stance-based caster, starting with a point in her Switch Stance's ultimate that allows her to alternate between Light Stance, which projects an aura that enhances the protection of her and her teammates, and Dark Stance, which creates an aura that increases power. Spending time in either stance grants her additional stats based on her stance attunement passive. Light Stance actually ends up decreasing the power of nearby enemies, while Dark Stance amps up her damage. Furthermore, these stances have their own separate set of abilities. Restoration is the first power of her Light Stance. It fires an orb that explodes upon contact with an enemy. However, if it contacts an ally, it will heal them, and then give Hel a little bit of healing as well. Its counterpart is Decay, which is just a bolt of rot that explodes to deal damage. The next ability of her Light Stance is Cleanse, which removes crowd control from allies in an area, and is the opposite of her Dark Stance's Hinder, which slows and reduces the protections of enemies in an area. Her final pair of abilities are Inspire, which heals allies over time while also speeding them up when she's in Light Stance, or her Dark Stance's Repulse, which simply damages enemies around her. In summary, Hel is a caster who can switch between two different states, one light and one dark, with different powers and focuses in each state. Her light side can restore and protect her friends, while her dark side focuses on dealing damage and afflicting her foes with debilitations. There's some fun concepts in this build, so let's dive into the details of this individual deity. The ancestry honestly isn't super important for this particular build. I went for human, but as long as you take an option that doesn't have a penalty to charisma or wisdom, it should work out. And that is because the main focus of this build will be the Nephilim heritage. There's a few specific things that I want from it, but we will start with the Angelkin lineage feat, calling to mind her divine heritage, and simply because the other celestial lineages didn't really strike a chord with me. I think she can use the multilingual feat and society training this gives her to communicate with the variety of souls that come under her care, and should be used to take languages that will be useful in whatever campaign you run this in. I will admit that I was hoping for a more psychopomp-based background, but I think the best option may be the cursed background, calling to mind the prophecy surrounding her and her siblings, as well as her half-living state. This makes her trained in occultism and cursed lore, but doesn't grant her a feat. Instead, it grants her the Warding Sign reaction, a very powerful reaction that grants a +2 bonus on a save against magical effects, or more if it's specifically a curse. Her final big choice here is the Psychic class. Right off the bat, we're going to be using the Unleash Psyche action of this class to help represent her Dark Stance, with the extra damage provided by this ability reflecting the enhanced damage of her stance attunement, as well as the extra power of her switch stances. This class has two sort of subclass features, starting with Hel's Subconscious Mind. Charisma seemed like a better fit for Hel, so I used the Emotional Acceptance since she has some healing capabilities in her kit, resembling her ability to restore the mind. She does also get to choose a Conscious Mind, which after a series of eliminations, settled on the Distant Grasp option. Without any feats, the main thing left to discuss here are her spells. Naturally, she gets 3 telekinetic cantrips from her Conscious Mind, but those aren't as important in representing her abilities. What is important are her 2 first rank spells. Bane is great to represent the power reducing effect of her Light Stance attunement, whereas Kinetic Ram is going to be another important one. It's a tiny dip into representing her Repulse, though mainly in its 3-action form. Now normally, Hel would be trained in occultism as a psychic, but she already got that from her background. So instead, she'll become trained in acrobatics, athletics, intimidation, and medicine. She wants to start with a focus on charisma as her main casting ability, but will also need wisdom for an archetype, and then some dexterity solely to help her defenses. At second level, Hel can take her cleric dedication, likely worshipping Pharasma or a similar deity of death, though I'm sure she would have some kinship with Nethys. This will make her trained in diplomacy and religion, and nets her some divine cantrips, probably picking more defensive options, or supportive ones since the DC will be a bit lower. She also gets a skill feat, picking up Stitched Flesh, given her familiarity with the dead, and starting to delve into her medicine skill feats. Finally, I bet you didn't expect such a jam-packed second level, she gains Soothe as a point to reflect her restoration ability. A healing spell, though something of a minor one. We will have other options that will further delve into this particular power. Instead of taking a normal general feat at 3rd level, Hel is going to take the Continual Recovery skill feat, thanks to this level's skill increase to Medicine, making her an expert in it. This skill feat is pure functionality, letting her quickly patch up her teammates outside of combat, but there is another aspect of it that I like. The general medicine investment helps to represent the healing capabilities of her Light Stance. Speaking of which, she can gain Restoration, or whatever the remaster version of it is, as her 2nd rank spell, and then signature it. While the 10-minute casting time isn't optimal, it is a good point of reference for her cleanse ability. For our multi-minded mage, we'll take basic cleric spellcasting, netting her a few more spells at 4th level. This starts with a 1st rank divine spell, which is probably best spent on Bless to enhance her allies, or Heal as another way to capture the feel of her restoration. Obviously this will unlock more spells as it goes, but more heals and other support-based spells are going to be the best option here. Now, while her investment in medicine reflects her Light Stance, Hel takes Intimidating Glare and starts delving into what will be her Dark Stance's focus on intimidation, reflecting her greater focus on debuffing adversaries. She does also get another 2nd rank spell here, which is likely best spent on Noise Blast to give her an area damage ability based on her decay. And this does capture the general effect of the ability, but not quite the spirit of it, at least going off of its name. 5th level isn't big in a mechanical sense, but it is important in the flavor sense, because it gives us the opportunity to take Scion of Many Planes, gaining a 2nd lineage from her heritage. To really dive into the contrasting aspects of this character, she will use this to take a fiendish lineage. Grimspawn makes the most sense to me, as I think of her being half dead should make her harder to slay. She also taps into 3rd rank spells here, which is best used to pick up a heightened protection, the increased aura of defense matching her Light Stance's Switch Stances effect. An increased intelligence then makes her trained in deception, while her actual skill increase makes her an expert in intimidation, as I promised. We're going to explore a little more of Hel's cleric options with basic dogma to take communal healing, which will serve to represent the aspect of Hel's restoration, where healing an ally also heals her for a portion of her health as well. This level also includes a way to represent one of her Dark Stance abilities, with Slow as one of her 3rd rank spells to represent Hinder. Then she's back to medicine feats with Battle Medicine as her skill feat for this level, giving her further tactics to tend to her team in a tussle. Now, with all these buffs and debuffs she has going on, Hel is going to want Incredible Initiative as her general feat at 7th level, letting her get ahead of the team and buff them. On the topic of buffs, she can also get Haste this level. Between this and a single action heal, she does have the basic building blocks for her Inspire, though it does lack the continual healing effect of this ability. Furthermore, with this level up, she can also become a master in medicine thanks to her skill increase. For her 8th level, our half and half Hellion can take Dark Persona's Presence as her class feat, which is mainly just to make her Dark Stance more pronounced when she enters it. The frightened aura it creates does kind of end up resembling her Light Stance's attunement, but more importantly, she can get 4 Rs going now. This one, Bane, Bless, and Protection, which is just kind of fun. As for her skill feat, she's going dark again, with terrifying resistance to menace enemies and gain greater defenses against them as a result. She's not strong enough to take intimidating prowess, and she's still only an expert in intimidation, so this is probably the best bet for now. As part of this build, I want to delve deeper into Hell's divine aspects, which leads to her taking Celestial Magic as her 9th level ancestry feat. It is worth noting that these spells don't heighten, so I think the best options, or at least the ones that are the most useful, are Revealing Light and Share Life, though she may want to be a little cautious about casting that second one. Another option for her hinder does also come up here in the form of Synaptic Pulse, which will be getting signatured since it has the incapacitation trait. As for her skill increase, she'll use it to become a master in intimidation. It admittedly is not super useful right now, but at 10th level, Hell takes Divine Breath. For now, this will just add an extra spell slot at first rank, but will become more potent as we take other spell casting feats. And while Restoration is a 10-minute casting time, she can also take up Advanced First Aid as her skill feat, so that she can remove conditions in the midst of a melee, based on her Cleanse ability. On top of that, Hell picks up Repelling Pulse as another 5th rank spell, which gives her a damaging emanation to rather appropriately represent her Repulse for when she's in Dark Stance. I don't mean to overuse this spell, nor Synaptic Pulse, but they're both very solid options. Inspire features increased movement, which comes into play with Fleet as Hell's general feat at 11th level, making her just a teensy bit faster. From her 6th rank spells, Awaken Entropy better fits the flavor of Decay and hits in an area, but unfortunately it has to be sustained rather than just being a big burst of damage like this ability is. So you really have to decide what is more important to you when you try to replicate it. Now with Medicine and Intimidation both mastered, she starts to become an expert in Religion this time around, mainly for the purpose of being able to take those higher level Cleric spellcasting feats. Regrettably, she still can't do so at 12th level, and settles for Psi Catastrophe instead, giving her another big burst area, which is why I went for this rather than Psi Burst. I personally think Burst is a bit better with its single action fitting in with her castings, but it doesn't really match any of her abilities, so we'll capture this Chaotic Catastrophe for her catalog. As for her skill feat, it will be spent on Battle Cry. She's got that Mastery Intimidation to take this, and throwing out that early debuff to then follow it up with one of her spells is a great way to open the fight. Our last Ancestry feat was Celestial Magic, so this time around we will take Fiendish Magic, demonstrating this divinity's dichotomy through options such as Invisibility and Paranoia. Again, these aren't based on any of her powers, but they're simply the most useful spells from the selection available. I had to come back and record that I actually forgot a super important spell at this level. Shock to the System.
I put a shock to your system. Good line.
This is an awesome spell that can both heal a target and make them quicken, which is a fastic way to represent Hell's Inspire. No more having to try to cast 2 spells at once. The only downside is that it only targets a single creature, but I think it's too good an option to pass up. A skill increase to Religion then makes her a master in it, which leads into Expert Cleric Spellcasting at 14th level. It's coming in a tiny bit late, but really makes her Divine Breath suddenly pop in usefulness. There still aren't any particularly new spells in these ranks that are leaping out at me, so she'll probably just keep preparing Bless and Heal, but you can look at others to take whatever you want here. She can then use Ward Medic as her skill feat so that she can tend to multiple targets at once while out of a fight, staving her allies off from her domain for just a little longer. Hell usually spends her time on the battlefield floating around, which is reflected by Featherstep as her general feat at 15th level, which also includes an increase to intelligence that will make her trained in Arcana, while her actual skill increase makes her a legend in Medicine. On the topic of always keeping her feet off the ground, this Overlord of the Underworld takes up Constant Levitation at 16th level, which grants her constant flight that increases in speed while her Psyche is unleashed. This level also lets her get 6th rank spells from her Cleric archetype, which can be spent on Field of Life. This spell generates an area of continual healing better resembling the way that the healing of her Inspire works. She's going to follow up her legendary medicine skill with the legendary medic skill feat, which gives her further ways to remove the conditions afflicted upon her companions. Though again, this isn't something that she can do in the midst of a fight. Dropping in at 17th level is Divine Declaration as her Ancestry feat, which will let her unleash a Divine Decree as a massive burst, another way to represent her Repulse or Decay, depending on where you place it. There's 2 spells that stand out for her 9th rank spells, but she can only take one to start with. using Synesthesia to have a super solid debuffing spell, leaving victims potentially clumsy 3 even on a successful save. For the sake of her next class feat, this skill increase will go to Religion, making her a legend in it. And that in turn means that Hel can take Master Cleric spellcasting for her 18th level class feat, simply adding more divine spells to her list. Again, nothing really stands out to me among these options, simply just heightening stuff that she's already been preparing. But I do think Wails of the Damned from her psychic spells is a perfect fit for a goddess of the Underworld. Now with all those 2-action spells that Hel is slinging around, Battle Prayer as her skill feat gives her a real nice single action ability to inflict some extra damage during a turn. It just slots in nicely for a caster. I had to increase Religion with the last skill increase so that she could take that feat at 18th level, so this time around at 19th level she will increase her Intimidation. This makes her a legend in this skill, which means of course that she will be taking Scare to Death, because I simply cannot resist taking this option whenever it's available. Coming in at 20th level is Twin Psyche, so that Hel can spend more time in her dark stance, letting her more fully manifest in her secondary identity. Whether her fight actually goes long enough for this to matter, I still think it's an important aspect to represent for her. As her final skill feat, she will take advantage of her legendary religion to use her divine guidance, letting her consult her deific kin, or even her other aspect. While she's pretty well put together, I do have some ideas for her use in a free archetype game. Obviously, the cleric dedication slots in easily, and could let her take psychic feats such as Psyburst or Target of Psychic Ire, but Hel already has most of the feats that she wants from cleric, so instead, she can start taking a look at a bard dedication. This gives her a few more auras that she can stack onto herself, but options such as Hymn of Healing or Rallying Anthem probably fit the best, respectively representing her Inspire and the protections of her Light Stance. It even gives her more occult spells to sling around that will use the same DCs and spell attacks as her psychic spells. But we are now done with the double time for this dualistic deity, which means it's time to look at a review for this build. Hel, the goddess of the Underworld, is a Nephilim human, distant grasp psychic, of the emotional acceptance subconscious mind, and the cursed background. The subconscious mind helps represent how she counsels the souls of the kind that make their way to her, while the background references both the prophecies surrounding her as well as her half-dead state. The contrast of her character, the differing aspects of her light and dark stances, are thematically explored through her heritage and its scion of many planes feet, allowing her to net both a celestial and fiendish lineage that is further developed through their respective magic feats. Her ability to switch stances comes in the form of the Psychic's Unleashed Psyche, with the extra damage resembling the enhanced magical power of Switch Stance, and the heightened damage of her Stance Attunement. Her Light Stance relies on spells for its aura, with a third-rank protection resembling her defensive aura, and Bane covering the decreased power that she inflicts on others. She looks for bursts such as Noise Blast, Shadow Blast, and Awaken Entropy to create her decay, or even the damaging aspect of Restoration, but has Soothe and Heal for its more restorative properties. She can even heal herself a little bit when using it through her Communal Healing feat. Her focus on medicine with Advanced First Aid can help her remove conditions in the midst of battle, while Restoration outside of a fight helps her to recreate her Cleanse ability. Its opposite, Hinder, can come from any number of debuffing spells, such as Synesthesia, with slow effects coming from Slow or Synaptic Pulse. On the other hand, Hel can quicken her allies with Haste, representing a mere facet of Inspire, which can be further covered with Shock to the System, featuring both healing and hastening, or Field of Life to generate an area of continual healing. The last of her abilities is Repulse, a very simple emanation of damage she initially tries to represent through Kinetic Ram, and eventually builds into Repelling Pulse. This build depicts Hel as a caster able to swap between her aspects through her Unleashed Psyche, and further explore her dichotomy through her heritages. While not necessarily restricted in casting spells in either state, she has a variety of spells that represents the effect that either one of them can create. In short, this bipolar baddie bolsters buds with bountiful benefits and blessings, but blights bullies with blasts, bringing Bane with a bit of bluster. I had a great vacation, but it is good to be back and bring you all another build. Let me know what you think of this one and what other builds you'd like to see in a comment. You can see other builds I've already done here on the channel, or even more over on the blog, which includes item suggestions and is linked below. Thanks for watching, and have a fantastic Friday.